Minority and Women Business Affairs, GOSPA, we're lovingly known as these days, formerly GOMA, June 25th, 2020, 9 a.m. And I just want to do a few housekeeping, one second. Few housekeeping things. First, since this is a virtual training, just want to get a few things for those who haven't. Thank you for everyone who have muted your microphones unless you're a presenter, and then I'll introduce you to speak. If we hear you, we might mute you, not because we don't love you, but sometimes it's a little confusing. If there's something and there's a pause in the presentation and you know there's something that you have to add, please do. We are all a team, and the collaborative spirit really helps all of us to learn. If you unmute yourself, like I said, you need to speak, introduce yourself, give us your first and last name, because everyone doesn't know everybody, and the agency prior to speaking. And those of you who want to use the chat bar, that's actually the most effective when you're asking questions and commenting. And we found in some of our previous virtual gatherings that we get some of the most valuable answers, because you all know, between us, I think we know everything, and you guys know a lot more. So please feel free, if you hear a question and you know the answer, to share it in the chat box. The red microphone, for those of you who are trying to figure stuff out, if you have, the red microphone is your mute. So most of you are muted, but the red camera, you don't have to have that on. You can, but unless you're presenting, we can see you in the chat box. Do not, if you can help it, do not hang up, because right here, I'm just going to show you, put this over here. On your toolbar at the bottom of your screen, when you hover around this area, this red thing, that's your phone to hang up. And if you hang up, we have to get you back in. So you're going to miss something. So please don't. And this is your camera here, pointing to, if you want to be, second, if you want to be, we got more people coming in. Numbers are coming up. If you want to be seen, we're not going to, you can't see everybody on the screen at the same time. So as we said, it's like, you don't have to go ahead and do that, but please mute yourself and try not to hang up. That'll be the best thing. Welcome to our training today. Small Business Reserve, as I mentioned. This is just an agenda overview of what we're going to cover today, just to give you an idea. As we said, we're recording this, so you're going to get all of this. And as we advance in the slide presentation, you'll see where we're going. Want to give a program overview. There are a number, quite a few, or several, I should say, liaisons, SBR liaisons, who are new. We also have new report preparers who need to understand what the program is, and we're hoping to give enough overview and resources and refreshers for those of you who already know, but it doesn't help to get a refresher. We're going to get legislative updates today with Chantal Kai-Lewis, our colleague, who's a policy and legal advisor. She's also going to do an overview of the Procurement Review Group process, known as PRG. I'm going to deal with our procurement forecast template and instructions, liaison duties to begin with, because again, those of you who are new or who may be shifting positions, it's just a reminder to you, and for those who have new supervisors or others who you report to, when they're asking what your duties are, we can take you right to COMAR, we can take you right to the legislation, because it's important. Our program is legislatively mandated. We're not volunteering. This is not something we feel like doing. We're legislatively mandated to do it. So liaison duties, the procurement forecast that is coming up, it's coming due on or before June 30th. Really, really important. Want to make sure you know where the template and the instructions are. Want to make this as simple as possible for us to get this valuable information from you. The strategic business plan template, also due on or before June 30th. We've had those templates in our toolkits, and I'm going to refer to the toolkits so you can see where they are since about the end of March. So they've been in there for a few months, and we're doing our best to get the templates and directions ahead of time, in enough time that you all can plan, because most of you don't do all of this by yourself. You're working in teams, and so when you're able to get your material and your templates ahead of time. Also want to make sure you know so that people are not using old templates. We're going to look at email and marketplace advantage, Emma, in particular finding SBR certified vendors, confirming certification, because for liaisons, if you cannot prove that a vendor is certified, the spend is not counted toward the 15% goal. They got the money in their pocket, but the state doesn't get the credit for working and spending with a small business reserve company. We're also going to get into quarterly and annual reporting requirements and procedures, because we've got annual reports coming up, but the good news is, and I'm going to say it again, no fourth quarter small business reports are due. Those are not due. The fourth quarter is not. Instead, we want you to begin working at the end of the fiscal year on the annual report that's not due until September 30th. I'll reiterate that. We're also going to get a VSBE, a Veteran Small Business Enterprise update on that program and the reporting with my colleagues, Tanita Johnson, and either Michelle will chime in or I'll give an overview. But important that, in particular during these post-COVID, and well, we're still in COVID times, veterans, that we pay some attention to this program, that it has room to grow. It really does. And we get calls from the veterans, and the database is starting to populate even more. And since our office took over the Veteran Small Business Enterprise Program, we also have a few announcements and some upcoming training dates. So a lot to cover today. As I mentioned earlier, we are going to share the slide deck, but this time we also have a recording, since the state has, I think it's Google has brought all of us into this next level of Google Meet. In the past, we couldn't record Google Meet in the Google platform. We used some workarounds, and they weren't as great as we'd like for them to be, but we have the ability to record. The slide deck you'll get in a bit. I'm thinking we're scheduled to go until 12. I'm pretty sure we're not going to go until noon, just for planning purposes. It's probably going to be closer, like 11:15. I'm just thinking at this point, the way, depending on questions and that kind of thing, we've got a lot of material to cover. But thinking about 10 o'clock, for those of you who need a break, that'll be a 10 or 15-minute break for stretching, or some of you, we have calls to return because it's a long training. We also have the Minority Business Enterprise training from 1 to 4 today. So for those of you who are doing the back-to-back training, be aware there's going to be a break in between. We're 9 to noon, Small Business Reserve. We'll have a little break in there around 10:15-ish, and then we'll be finished by noon. There'll be a 12 to 1 break. Is that, Michelle, you're ready? You can start at 1, not sooner or anything, right? Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, correct, Lisa.
You're fine. I just want to make sure I'm not misspeaking. And I am going to be getting a survey out to you guys. I wasn't able to, and I might get graded on that, wasn't able to get a survey out to you today, but I would like to get some feedback. When we have our in-person training, we get fantastic feedback from you all. And so I'm going to send out a survey to get some feedback from you on the training today. So really appreciate if you're able to do that. And if you want to do it and put your name on it, or if you want to be anonymous, just want the feedback from you, because this training is for you all. And if it's addressing what you need, would like to know that. If there are things that you weren't able to get, would like to know that as well. I'd like to bring greetings on behalf of our Special Secretary, Jimmy Ree, and just reintroduce some of you and introduce others to the rest of our staff. We are not an agency, we're an office. We're a small group. This is all of us right here on this screen. A third of us are in the training today. Jimmy Ree, our Special Secretary, always sends his greetings, in particular when we meet on a weekly basis, our group does, and we talk about the importance of the liaisons, the importance of procurement officers, report preparers. You all are the lifeblood of these programs. Without what you do, without you doing what you do, we don't have the programs. And so greetings on behalf of our Special Secretary. Also want to make sure to acknowledge our Chief of Staff, Pam Gregory. Many of you know Pam. She's worked at Maryland Department of Transportation, and she was with the office formerly known as GOMA. And Pam is, as a Chief of Staff, the kind of leader that has really pushed for us to have regular communication with you, our partners in the state of Maryland, from our compliance procurement compliance call to our procurement compliance bulletin to having more regular training. So if you are appreciating some of the training and some of the communication, our chief of staff, she's not new, but she's only been here back with us for about a year, has a lot to do with the level of communication that we have. And that brings us to Allison Tavitt, who's our director of communication. And a lot of what you see from us has Allison's handprints all over it, from our small business bulletin. And I apologize for any noise in my background. We've got construction in the neighborhood. Allison Tavick, our Director of Communications and Outreach, develops our Small Business Reserve Bulletin. I encourage all of you to visit our website. We have a host of resources that you can refer your vendors to, but also you can take advantage of. We do an annual magazine called Expanding Opportunities. Allison pulls it together, but we all submit ideas. This magazine's been coming out at least 5-6 years that I can recall, but it's on our website, and we give businesses a number of resources there about how to do business, how to do it better, in particular for small businesses, that's our audience. But also we highlight, recommend businesses, some of whom are your clients or you're their customers, I should say. We look for small businesses from you who are getting it right, who are doing good business with the state. We highlight these companies. This is the year of the woman. So there'll be a number of women-owned businesses that we highlight this year, but we just highlight several, and we tell stories. We get them to talk about how do they do what they do. It is hard, and I know we have heard numerous stories, in particular during this time of COVID. It's been tremendously hard on big businesses. So on the smaller businesses, it's just been brutal. And so this year's Expanding Opportunities magazine comes out in September. I think it's in August, between August and September, comes out on our website. There are hard copies as well. We distribute them at our live events. But it's encouraging to learn about the businesses that we deal with on a regular basis. So Expanding Opportunities magazine, our Small Business Bulletin. Those of you who are not connected, I know you get a lot of emails. In the Stay Connected section on the GOSPA website, and I'll put our website down at the end for those who don't go as often, you can get alerts not only about our events, but a number of different other kinds of events that are going on with businesses, with small businesses. And so when you're looking to plan in terms of your numbers, in terms of getting those SBR numbers up, whether it's direct soliciting, or that kind of thing, you may be looking at some of the events that come through our website as potential to meet small businesses. Chantal Kai-Lewis is next. She's going to be coming up in just a few minutes, our legal and policy advisor. Brilliant. I'm going to be talking a little bit later some more. Tanita Johnson, I mentioned earlier. She's our Small Business Reserve Compliance Manager. We together run the help desk. She does most of the heavy lifting and also works with Veteran Small Business Enterprise Certification. Michelle Johnson, many of you know, probably all of you, our MBE Compliance Manager. Eduardo Hayden, who you guys see from time to time, he's our Outreach Manager. He's not on with us today, but just wanted to make sure you know he is there if you're looking to have someone from our office come and participate in an event, or looking for opportunities like that. Please reach out to Eduardo or one of us and we will link you with Eduardo. And last but certainly not least, Gerald Stinnett is our MBE Compliance Manager, VLT Operations, so all things casino. Gerald is the man. I am going to do this. Just an overview. 2004 is when the Small Business Reserve Program was created. It provides small businesses with the opportunity to participate as prime contractors on state contracts. There's a unique marketplace that's been established where small businesses compete against other small businesses instead of larger, more established companies. This is a race and gender neutral program. And I mention that because people get small business reserve confused with small business enterprise. SBR is not SBE, and this is the relevant COMAR language that expressly gets into the program. The other, in terms of the program, those who have been participating in the past knew there was a 10%. The legislation directed participating agencies to spend 10%. I'm sorry, I said they did spend 10%. Legislation in 2017 has now upped the goal, upped the spend to 15% of the fiscal year procurement expenditures with qualified small businesses. The other detail here is that in the past, coincidental spending has been allowed. It is not, we count spend that is just money that you've paid an SBR company, but if the contract was not designated, it does not go toward the 15% goal. We're going to get into that a bit later in terms of just a lot more detail in terms of how we can get to that 15% because our numbers are not nearly where they could be. And so overview in terms of SBR, and if I have my colleague, Chantal Kai-Lewis on, I am going to introduce her and let her begin to give us a 2020 legislative session update. There was a more brief session this past legislative period, 90-day session, was truncated because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But there was legislation that came through that will impact and is impacting the small business community, the socioeconomic programs that we oversee. And so if Chantal, because I did talk with her a little earlier, is there, we're gonna, and she is there. Good morning, Ms. Kai-Lewis.
Good morning, everyone. As Lisa mentioned, there was a pretty abrupt ending to the 2020 legislative session. As you all know, due to COVID, it ended about 3 weeks early. However, there was some legislation that is pertinent to at least the MBE and VSBE programs that went into effect. There was one on the table that mentioned raising the SBR goal to 25%. Luckily, that did not go through as we're still working diligently to build this program. But I'm just going to go over the two most important bills coming out of this session for these programs. The first one being House Bill 313. This is what we call the P3 legislation. And it basically says that the BPW can't approve any public-private partnership agreements under the transportation title until the procuring agency in consultation with our office and the OAG and whatever private entity the agreement is with establishes a reasonable and appropriate MBE participation goal, as well as procedures for the project. And this is major because that means a lot of opportunities coming down the pipeline for small and minority businesses on these large transportation projects. This bill also said that tenets of the MBE program, which apply to the casino industry and offshore wind projects, will be extended. For the VLT, the MBE provisions are extended through July 1st, 2023. And for P3 and offshore wind, the provisions go into effect next week. Next week is July 1st and terminate on June 30th, 2023. And so those are the two major pieces of legislation that I wanted to touch on. Oh, the second one, the first one was so meaty, I forgot. I have the second slide, is the Task Force to Study Veteran-Owned Small Business Enterprise Program. For those of you that double as a liaison for other preference programs like the MBE or VSBE, this is going to be a major one to look out for. This task force was established and comprised of both internal and external representatives and stakeholders in the VSBE community. And it's charged with looking at opportunities for more VSBE participation in state contracts, as well as improvement of the state's VSBE program through increasing the participation rates and increasing oversight across the participating agencies. This is important because, as many of you know, this program, or at least the reporting aspect of the VSBE program, was housed under the BPW for quite some time. But that was just the reporting mechanism. And now, since 2018, our office has been charged with not only developing a process whereby the state certifies MBEs VSBEs directly, as opposed to going through VetBiz, but also with establishing more robust regulations and procedures for day-to-day administration of the program. And so this work group is going to be critical to achieving that. Recommendations from the work group are to be submitted to the governor on December 1st, 2020. So any questions on legislation from this session?
If you've got a question on legislation, you guys are welcome to unmute. I'm going to mute. I think we're good, Chantal.
Okay. So since there are no questions on that, we're going to get into the fun stuff. The PRG group, the do's and don'ts. I always love to do a refresher on the Procurement Review Group and the PRG process, because this is one of, if not the most important indicator of MBE or VSBE program success. Of course, these are programs that are based in aspirational goals, and so how we go about setting goals at the outset is incredibly important. Second, only of course to compliance monitoring, but with no goals, there's nothing to monitor, right? So let's get into the PRG group. Starting with the basics, what is the PRG group? Of course, it is a standing group within each agency that's charged with the process of reviewing solicitations, task order solicitations, proposed sole source contracts, and contract renewal options. Anything that is expected to exceed $200,000 must be assessed in order to maximize opportunities for MBE and VSBE participation. So there are official forms that must be utilized by the PRG group in making recommendations for the contract goals, and those are available on the GOSBA website and the MBE and VSBE toolkits. You can find them both as Word documents and Excel documents. You all, the SBR liaisons, are actually really on the front line because you help determine, before something even gets into looking at a race-conscious goal, you all are charged with determining whether a small business reserve designation would be more appropriate or some other preference. As a best practice tip, I think, can we go back to the previous? Yep. Just wanted to add as a best practice tip, and if you haven't heard Michelle say this until she's blue in the face, especially now during the COVID crisis and its aftermath, you should not be automatically exempting emergency procurements from MBE goal consideration. If there's sufficient time between the declaration of the emergency and execution of the contract, and it's a solicitation that's ripe for MBE participation, you should be considering an MBE goal. And Additionally, in some instances, I think historically there's been a notion that MBE goals do not apply to SBR procurements. This could not be any less true. SBR procurements can be larger procurements over 200,000 and include more than a single element of work. And in such instances, an MBE goal should be considered as well. So on to the composition of the PRG group. Of course, this is statutorily mandated, and as I mentioned, this should be a standing group. The participants of the PRG must include, at a minimum, the agency chief or senior procurement official, the MBE liaison officer, and may also include SBR liaisons, procurement officers, and program representatives. There are instances where a PRG determination could require the assistance or support of legal counsel. And in such instances, we really encourage you to not hesitate to utilize your legal staff. Okay. Any questions so far? Or should I hold to the end?
We're open to Chantal if they
question. PRG are required 200,000 and above, but more and more PRG documents are being required. Yes, that is true. Many agencies are requiring it at a lower threshold, which we love. We are not opposed to. $200,000 threshold is just what was set in accordance with the contracts that are going to BPW. But if there is an opportunity for MBE participation at lower thresholds, because we do have many micro MBEs and so forth, OSP at 100,000. Yes, we've talked about that in SPAG as well. So yeah, 200,000 is what it says in reg and legislation in BPW advisories, but more and more the threshold is being lowered, and we love to see it. The more opportunity, the better. Moving on to the statewide goal. As you all know, the statewide aspirational goal is 29%. It's for the new folks, of course, it's important to remember that this is an overall goal, meaning your aggregate MBE spend at the end of the year should ideally equal about 29% of your overall procurement spend. And contract goals must be considered on a contract by contract basis, no blanket goals. When I do review of PRG for the 25 million and above threshold, the minute that I see a 29% goal, my spidey senses start going off, and it might just be a coincidence. But that's definitely going to make me ask more questions, because we want to ensure that we are setting these goals based on evidence and based on what we see in the scope of work and engineers estimate, etc. Sub goals is a bit of a sore spot because they're a little in limbo right now. But as of now, they are still in place, and we're still utilizing the guidance that is available on our website. The sub-goals were, of course, established in 2011 to further diversify the firms that we use to fulfill the overall goal. So the recommended sub-goals for each combined industry category are, you'll see set forth in this chart on your screen. And the guidelines are also available on the GoTo website in the MBE toolkit. But essentially, once an overall MBE participation goal is set for a contract, each agency has to determine the appropriate sub-goals using this process. And just a few reminders, again, for procurements that are not expected to have a value that equals or exceeds 200,000, the sub-goal process. Whoa, I almost dropped my laptop. Process is good save. This is my little rinky-dink news anchor lady setup I have here. Almost lost my laptop. If the overall goal for the contract is not greater than or equal to the sum of the sub-goals plus 2, the unit may not use sub-goals on that contract. A recommended sub-goal may not be set if the number of certified firms in the subgroup who are available to perform work on a contract is less than 3. So that's the marker for availability in terms of setting a sub-goal. Okay, so this, of course, is the part that probably impacts this group the most. It's the race-neutral measures, which are outlined in COMAR 2111-0307. Before we even look at MBE goal setting, each unit is strongly encouraged to meet the maximum feasible portion of its overall MBE spend by employing race-neutral measures. And this term can be kind of counterintuitive, but essentially what it means are methods that assist businesses without regard to their social, economic, racial, or sexual composition. And examples of race-neutral measures are listed below, but they include using our beloved Small Business Reserve Procurement Designation or the Small Business Preference Program. It could also mean dividing a large procurement into several smaller procurements when feasible. I've seen this done. Some agencies, DGS I'm thinking of in particularly, have done it sometimes by region. It could also mean maintaining a database of qualified small businesses, including MBEs, in order to direct solicit and keep them informed of upcoming procurements. It could also mean relaxing bond requirements where permissible, or simplifying bidding requirements so that they are not unduly burdensome or onerous to small businesses. It could be advising businesses of what successful bidders have done right. And also means, and this is key, especially again during this COVID crisis and with everything going on virtually, still utilizing your pre-solicitation conferences to clarify complex solicitations and to link subs and primes, as well as just explain the tenets of both the solicitation and the requirements when it comes to MBE or SBR or any other provision.
We have a comment of military having had issues with the Office of Legislative Audits when dividing larger procurements into smaller procurements.
Mm-hmm. On what basis? They thought it was under the guise of...
Kathy, can you unmute for a moment to explain?
So we just had an audit, and the military department issues maintenance contracts by location instead of one large contract for, like, example, our crane and hoist. So we do them by location. And what the auditor said was that we divided them to circumvent the threshold dollar that the agency has for issuing maintenance contracts. And that they felt that we should do them by either region or do a single contract with a multiple award. And I told them that the agency is not allowed to do multiple award contracts, that would have to go to the control agency, and we were, quote, dinged on it. Joan Peacock from DBM, Danny Mays from Office of State Procurement provided insight and input, and basically agreed with what we did and said that we didn't do anything wrong, and sent their comments to legislative auditors. And I understand that some other agencies, in talking to some peers, are having the same issue. So while we try to make it so that small businesses in a certain area can participate, the agencies are being smacked on their hands or fingers for doing that. So I don't know if something from your office can go to legislative auditors. They're definitely not on board.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, well.
We'll look into that. 'Cause, I
Yeah,
mean,
we'll definitely look into that. And as I mentioned, this is of
I
course.
mean, I can send you our audit notes if you need them.
Mhm.
yes.
Yeah, that would be great. I definitely think we need to come to a common ground with respect to our practice programs as well as our constitutional requirements. We're required to go through these race neutral measures before we consider anything else. And so dividing these larger procurements is a great way to do that and increase participation. So if OLA has an issue with that, it's definitely something that we'll need to discuss further. It was one of the recommendations in our disparity studies. And so there's definitely a record and a precedent for this being used.
Thank you, Kathy, for the question. I see Margaret has a question about what the limitations are for, go ahead. Go ahead. I thought you were.
Margaret or me?
Margaret was asking about direct solicitations. Are there limits on direct solicitations? And I'm saying, no, they're not limits. And could you explain?
Yeah, could you expound, Margaret? Because
Okay.
we encourage it. Mhm.
Okay, so I mean, I'm new. I just joined the agency, Department of Environment. Oh, my name again is Margaret Obanifo, with the Department of Environment. I'm new on the program, and I want to know what the limitations are, especially at this time with COVID. How do we do? What's the limitation? What can't I do? What can I do in direct solicitation for more participation? Because it's very key at this point to have people participate, even though most of that, everything is mostly online right now. How do we solicitate and make sure we still stay compliant?
Mhm. Well, Margaret, I encourage you. I think you'll see if you look at some of the BPW agenda items and the remarks, you'll often see on almost every procurement that goes before the BPW, it'll say something to the effect of the solicitation was advertised on eMaryland Marketplace. It was directly sent to this many vendors, this many of whom were MBEs. And so direct solicitation is just as it sounds, just sending the RFP out or solicitation out as a blast to as many folks as you can directly, either via email or whatever else, just getting the notification out there. And so there's certainly no impropriety involved with that. It's encouraged. And so just to the extent practicable, get the word out to as many folks as possible. So there are no limitations in that regard.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's a good question. And that's where the nuances, people think that something else was being said by direct soliciting. It's not favoring, it's just getting the most audience, the largest audience, and more likely to get the participation up. So, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So now back to the actual process of goal setting, some factors to consider when establishing an MBE goal. You're going to want to have your scope of work handy, your engineer's estimate, as well as previous compliance reports to see where the goal has been met previously, as well as some semblance or historical record of projects that have been similar in size or scope. That's going to help you in identifying what subcontractable areas are available in a procurement. And the primary questions you should be considering are, again, can the procurement reasonably be broken down into subcontracting opportunities? If so, you're going to want to list all the NAICS codes for those categories on the PRG form. Are the MBEs available in the primary and subcontracting categories required in the procurement? Again, there should be 3 or more in order to establish a goal for that subcategory. Where are the MBEs located if the goods or services must be provided locally? Does it make sense geographically to consider those MBEs available? And lastly, does the contract structure support subcontracting? Some contracts simply do not. If they are single element of work, it's more difficult. If it's something that is a high liability area, for direct solicitation, the notification had to emphasize SBR only, invited. Yes, that's correct for SBR. For SBR solicitations, it should expressly state that it's SBR designated. Lastly, we've talked about this before, but if sole source and emergency contracts can reasonably include MBE participation goals, that is a question as well to consider. Okay, on to goal setting and counting. This is an area that is a sore spot for a lot of vendors who are filling out MBE forms. We do allow MBE primes to self-perform up to 50% of an established contract goal and 100% of any sub-goal that they qualify for. So if there's a 20% MBE goal, it's an MBE prime contractor, they can fulfill up to 10% of that goal, and one sub-goal category if applicable. The remainder must go to another firm. The MBE and VSBE programs are mutually exclusive, meaning that firms that are certified for both can be counted towards both program goals if both are on a contract. Lastly, when setting goals, you don't want to forget to consider the impact of the 60% rule, which has been in effect now since, I believe, 2017. It essentially states that only 60% of the material or supplies purchased from a regular dealer count toward the project's overall MBE goal. So if you know that you have a fixed amount of supplies that you need for a contract, please set the goal accordingly. If supply purchases will account for 5% of the overall contract value under normal circumstances, the goal that you would set in the PRD would actually be 3% to account for the 60% rule, so that vendors can actually hit that mark. These are just some other PRD requirements we sent out, unless they are manufacturer correct, Alan, which counts for 100%, or unless they're furnishing and installing, which also counts for 100%. So other PRD requirements, you probably received a memo from us maybe last year or earlier this year, please asking that you send all procurements expected to exceed 25 million to GOSPA for PRD approval. We do review those in terms of a 72-hour turnaround time for review of those. And lastly, just provide as much detail and context as possible on your PRD determination. This is critical for historical purposes. I can tell you how many times a contract comes up for renewal or a new cycle, and folks are trying to reinvent the wheel and figure out why a goal was set at a certain way when there is a pretty significant description box on the PRG form, which allows the PRG group to expound upon the rationale for any goal that they set. And so with that, I'll take any, well, should we do the,
We can do the, if no questions, or we'll do the little scenario. And this is why, Chantal, really appreciate you, why we are blending we discussed the MBE goal setting because of the SBR overlap and the need for the voices to be at the table and overseeing how the procurements are being carved out. And so, do you want to do this one?
Sure. So we have a PRG scenario here for your consideration. We have an SBR dredging company, and they were a subcontractor to a large firm on a $5 million dredging and tugboat project in 2019. They handled $1.5 million worth of the dredging work. Now it's 2020 and a new dredging contract arises, and it's estimated at a pretty significant amount lower than the 2019 contract at $3 million. And the PRG is reviewing the scope and determines that this is a contract that is ripe for SBR designation, because they believe with this new contract threshold, there are some small firms or enough small firms to bid on this work. So what would be the best practice to put forth the solicitation? Send it out to open market, no designation, no MBE goal. Send it out to open market with a 3% VSBE goal. Send it out as an SBR designation and accept a winning bid with an SBR naming a large contractor to perform 70% of the work, or send it out to open market with an MBE goal. You can put answers in the chat box.
Yes. Like to get a little feedback if we can. And this is one, we have used this scenario before, but it'll be interesting to see if folks are questioning what they should do. So we know what you could do. Would you put it out on the open market? Would you make it an SBR designated with an MBE goal? Would it just be SBR designated? Any feedback? No one wants to be right. Oh, here we go, here we go. SBR, thank you so much, Yama. SBR with an MBE goal, an SBR designation, and accept winning bid with SBR. Okay, and I want to get into this one too. SBR with an MBE goal. SBR. So the consensus is SBR with an MBE goal. That's the answer. That's what we would go with, based on the dollar amount and the fact that there could be subcontractable. Chantal, I didn't mean to talk over you. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. So ideally, this would go out as an SBR designation with an MBE goal. It's just at that dollar threshold and the type of work that that would lend itself to subcontracting, even though it is an SBR designation. I think the key option that we wanted to touch on is that SBR designation and accept a winning bid with an SBR naming a large firm to perform 70% of the work. That has been an issue that has been coming up more and more frequently. Unfortunately, we've had SBR firms reaching out and saying, hey, I want to bid on this project, but I'm going to sub it out to a firm that doesn't meet the requirements of the program. Unfortunately, there's nothing explicitly in statute or regulation right now as it stands that will change, but right now there's nothing explicitly that bars that, although it is fundamentally against anything that the SBR program stands for. And so we just wanted to make sure that that was on you all's radar as well.
Because we are getting that question, and while the spirit of the law can be the practice, I mean, we don't, it undermines the ability. I mean, you got SBR that is only getting a job it is intended to prime. That's the letter, that is the law, is to prime the contract. And as a small business, to be a pass-through undermines the whole spirit of the program. And it also undermines MBE and, a VSBE to go around those and go up, to a larger company. It doesn't build capacity for the programs or for small businesses.
Yep.
Yeah. Let me just go to the next one and then we'll be wrapping up. Okay.
Okay, so on the final PRG scenario, an agency has a need for 3 project managers to handle a routine IT data migration project. It's estimated to cost $100,000 over a 2-year period. So that's relatively small on a year-to-year basis. What is the best practice to put forth this solicitation? To open market with no MBE goal, to open market with BSBE goal, SBR designated, open market with a 20% MBE goal, SBR designation with an MBE goal. Okay, I got one response.
Got a ringer there. Carlos is SBR designated Sharon's. Yeah, SBR designated.
Yeah, that is our consensus as well. This would be SBR designated. It's only 50,000 from year to year. Again, it's for personnel, so there's no real way to break that down or subcontract it. So in this instance, this would be a perfect opportunity for an SBR firm.
Chantal, thank you so much. And before you go, does anyone have any other questions? The material that we covered, or is there something else that you've been wanting to ask and just did not have an opportunity? Anybody? I think we're good. Ms. Kyle Lewis, thank you so much, as always.
All righty. Bye, guys.
And we've put her contact information there, and just don't flutter. Chantal is great about getting back. Thanks, Chantal.
Thank you.
So want to get into, we're going to touch on, I'm looking at the time, it's close to 10 o'clock. I'm thinking we could take about let me see, it's not over, 15-minute break. Go to 10:05, if that's okay with you guys. Do not, if you would like to stay on, don't hang up. Please don't hang up. We'll have to readmit everybody and that will prolong things. If you can just mute your mic, which most of them are muted, we can come back at 10:10. That gives us 15 minutes. So if you want to freshen up your coffee, you have to make a phone call, just mute your mic. We're coming back right at 10:10. I also want to get the presentation to a couple folks who've been waiting patiently who are not able to see what we're seeing. But 10:10, we're coming right back. There's a bunch of us on the call. We're up to almost 90 folks. So hopefully we'll get you back and we'll go rolling right through the procurement forecast template, the strategic business plan, searching for SBRs, and the quarterly and annual reporting. So let's take it now and we'll see you at 10:10. I'm not turning it off. We're just shutting our mics off. Everyone, we're resuming in about 2 minutes. It's 10:08 and we're going to be resuming at 10:10, just letting you know. Okie doke. We're going to get back rolling again. Thank you, everybody, for staying on and staying engaged. We're going to roll through this, just making sure everyone is aware of what is coming up, what your roles are if you're new, and reminders if you're not. We're going to be talking about SBR liaison regulations and duties first, just to kind of set the stage that you all as the SBR liaison officers, and I've been getting more questions about the specificity of the role of the Small Business Reserve liaison and the statute, the COMAR regulations 2111-0106 say that this is the head of each procurement unit. Your agency shall designate an employee to be the Small Business Reserve liaison in the administration of that unit's Small Business Reserve program. This person, this Small Business Reserve liaison officer, shall be a high-level employee reporting directly to the agency head or head of the procurement unit. This is really important, and why we're recording this and why you all will have this to share in your meetings with your colleagues and the folks that you report to, because everybody just doesn't know. And when the numbers come out in terms of SBR's percentage of attainment, many times the higher level people don't know. The department heads and the unit heads don't know what's going on because they're not connected to the liaison officers in quite a few agencies. And so that's why this is important, to be able to share this information in with the people that you report to. The liaison officer shall be responsible for, and of course, all liaison officers don't do all of this, but ultimately you have to turn it in, coordinating the procurement unit's outreach efforts to the small business community. And we're going to get into how the reports and how the compliance pieces feed into the ability to get to your numbers, is to be able to conduct outreach efforts or participate in other agencies' outreach efforts, or coming to GOSPA's outreach efforts, reviewing the unit's contracting procedures to ensure compliance with the Small Business Reserve requirements. And that's just obvious. You're looking at what your contracting procedures are, and we're looking at anything above, Office of State Procurement is looking at 100,000, but you know, in terms of, I'm sorry, I'm getting confused. Anything above, even the smaller procurements rather, can be, and our advice is to look at them as Small Business Reserve designated procurements, in particular, ones that are below the MBE subcontracting threshold. We should be looking at as SBR. I'm seeing something here with COVID. Will outreach events take on a different delivery method, or will they resume at a later date? Great question. Right now, we have suspended our outreach in terms of our office, the in-person outreach. We have our Ready, Set, Grow procurement connection workshops, and those are outreach, and so are our technical training classes. Those have been suspended temporarily until the protocols can be put in place for us to have people in a building and what those numbers look like. So right now, but our outreach director and manager, Allison and Eduardo, are now looking at and beginning to get the virtual outreach together in terms of what that looks like. So you should be seeing and hearing from us about that very, very shortly. They're right at the edge of developing something, and then they'll be advertising it. But currently, our in-person or our outreach in terms of that is suspended. Now we're doing the virtual training because we had already started doing this back, I think it was February. We did, because of the weather, decided that we needed to have some virtual training in place, and Google has allowed us to do that. We'd love to see you in person, but we are able to do at least internal outreach, but our external outreach is going to resume. And as soon as it's up and running, you all will be notified. If you're not receiving notifications, you're a Small Business Reserve Liaison, MBE Liaison, or SPAG, or someone who's just interested in, in terms of your work, report preparation, or whatever it is, you want to be connected, or you're a buyer, just a buyer, please let us know, and we will add you to our direct mail list. We're constantly updating it as changes occur, and your job description doesn't have to be a Small Business Reserve Liaison or MBE in order for us to send you updates of the opportunities in terms of our outreach as to when it will start, when it will resume. I don't know what you guys are doing in terms of outreach, and we'll probably get into that a little bit later. And I'll say, Yamo, are you guys doing outreach, since you asked the question? And you can answer in the chat. Okay, you're not at this point either. Yeah, we're all trying to kind of adjust to this, and I think some folks have been feeling that maybe we'd be able to go back sooner, and I think we're going to need a mix of those. You rely on Ready, Set, Grow. I will let Eduardo Hayden and Allison Tavick know that, because I know a lot of businesses rely on that as well. So as soon as it's up and running, you guys are going to be notified. We're going to have it in our small business bulletin. We're going to have it in our procurement bulletin that we're sending out almost every month now. If you're not getting the procurement compliance bulletin from us, please let us know. Email myself, Nichelle, or Tanita, and just let us know, and we will definitely add you to the list. So additionally, the SBR liaison officers assist in the resolution of small business reserve contracting issues. Our office, not a lot, but we do get calls from small business reserve certified companies who are either having a contract issue, a payment issue, and what we tell them is that their first line of communication is with the Small Business Reserve Liaison. Well, it can be also with the contract administrator, to let them know what's happening, that there are issues or bumps. That's that relationship. That's who they entered into the contract with. After that, if there are issues reaching that person, because this is a prime contract, so they're the person, the company that is has the relationship with the state of Maryland. The next is the liaison officer. And you all, liaison officers, should be aware that your names are listed on GOSPA's website, SBR Liaisons, MBE Liaisons, and if legislation sees fit down the road, there will be VSBE, Veteran Small Business Enterprise Liaisons. But we do that so that, and we tell vendors, as we're training them in technical training, to reach out to you. Don't wait until there's a problem. Introduce themselves electronically with their statement, their capability statement. Tell them, tell you all who they are and introduce them. Sometimes they have a contract, sometimes they're looking for buyers, but to introduce themselves along the way. And it's not being a pest, this is how sales goes. You are their customers. And so we ask them to please reach out to you. And people can be persistent, but we say, let them know who you are, the capability statement. And if someone is reaching out to you and they're not giving you, a business owner, the material that you need to advance the relationship, please let them know. Let them know if you don't understand what they do. And we all know that you have full plates, so it's going to take the time that it takes, but you are the small business owner's link. You're the bridge into the agency. And so please be communicating with them. telling them the good news, as our special secretary often says, what is it, sad truth is better than a happy lie. But if you're talking to them and saying, hey, maybe you're not ready, or I need to see this from you, that is communication. And hopefully by communicating, they will not end up with contracting issues. But if they do, please don't send them to us before the agency has attempted to resolve the issue that the Small Business Reserve Company has with the agency. And if you haven't done it, it's not you, but we do get folks who say, yes, agency said call you. And it's like, no, we get involved when it can't be handled, when no one is returning anyone's calls and it has hit a wall. Another area is submitting required Small Business Reserve Program reports or information. And that is a lot of what we're talking about and we're going to get into today. The procurement forecast, the strategic business plan, annual reports will be due in September, and we'll go through those just so you get an understanding, because I do get folks who are liaisons and report preparers who are telling me that they have their, they're working on their annual report. And I'm like, no, or their fourth quarter report. And I'm saying, please don't work on the fourth quarter report because that's not due. Your fourth quarter report in the Small Business Reserve Program, the quarters are cumulative. So your fourth quarter report is your annual report. It's not due until September 30th, but the procurement forecast and the strategic business plan are due June 30th. And so it's important to prioritize and try to get those done. This is as it relates to the program. Once a solicitation has been designated as SBR, an award can only be made to a certified SBR vendor. Certification is an online process through the vendor registration process on the state's e-procurement platform, which most of you are familiar with, e-Maryland Marketplace Advantage, EMMA, not e-Maryland Marketplace. And we have vendors who think that they are registered in the Small Business Reserve Program because they really are not aware that e-Maryland Marketplace sunsetted in July of last year, which means they're really not working with their account. If you're not aware that a system that you were interacting with sunsetted, it went away July 19th of last year, you're not really utilizing it. So my colleague Tanita and I are the Small Business Reserve Help Desk. Now, of course, the e-Maryland Marketplace Help Desk gets a lot of the calls as well, but they send also quite a few to us because we take the time to explain to vendors about the Small Business Reserve Program and whether or not they're helping them to determine whether or not they're eligible and is this something that they want to be involved in. As we mentioned, Small Business Reserve Program is race and gender neutral. Minority status is not a criteria for participation in the Small Business Reserve Program. You can see Maryland Code, State Finance and Procurement Article 14, Section 14501. Yes, minority businesses can participate. Anyone can participate in the Small Business Reserve. Race and gender neutral doesn't mean you can't be a race and participate. And I'm saying that because also get questions from minority business owners that think they cannot participate, from veteran small business enterprise think they can't participate. And how we explain it to them is, well, first of all, it's free. And many folks think our programs with the state, in particular, the Small Business Reserve, is going to cost them. It does not. E-Maryland Marketplace Advantage, you create a free profile. It's costing them their time to fill it out because it could take a few hours to develop a profile, and then within that profile, register for the Small Business Reserve Program, or perhaps register for the Veteran Small Business Enterprise Program if they're eligible. But what we try to help small businesses understand is that these are tools. Procurement, dealing with a big business is no joke. And I think many of you interact with small businesses who are looking for something. They'd like something large, but this small business program allows them to compete against other similarly sized. You've got some folks who are, 5-person or 2-people shops competing against some with 20, but that is not the same as having to compete with Walmart. It just is not, or some business that's not quite as large as that. So this gives them a tool. It doesn't cost them a lot. And in terms of the procurement end of it, the more Small Business Reserve companies we get into the database, the better, the easier time you're going to have in terms of carving out procurements and the capacity. One of the areas that we have with the Emma system is that it's not, no system is intuitive, to be honest with you, unless you invented it. But the fact that new businesses are coming in to register, to create a profile, if they have not completed that profile, if they've not filled in their contact information, if they have not completed the SBR, they simply said, yes, they want to be an SBR, but they have not actually completed the online application and gotten certified, they're of no use to you when you're trying to carve out a small business reserve procurement. So those of you who have relationships with small businesses, again, you're the entry, you're the bridge into the agency. So when you come across small businesses, it's asking them, are you registered in the Small Business Reserve Program? Do you know about it? Please send them to us. You can send them to our website, our contact information. You guys know us. You can send them directly and just say, hey, call Lisa, call Tanita. Our phone numbers are there. We're teleworking now. Our cell phones I think have been added to the website. So we are very available. I spoke with 4 businesses yesterday who just did not understand the Small Business Reserve Program, but we walk them through it. We show them the quick reference guides and an understanding that registration is easy, but they have to have their information. And yes, they could be audited. We let them know, because one of the things with the Small Business Reserve Program that those of you who've been in for a while understand, unlike MBE, we're not auditing in real time. There is just not the personnel to audit every small business company at the time of every procurement. But we have very, very intelligent, smart procurement people who understand when they think somebody is not who they say they are on paper at the time of procurement. They're signing at the time of the award. You can reach out to us if you're concerned that a company is above the threshold and that they are pretending to be eligible. We can conduct an audit. It takes about 10 to 12 days. We give the companies 5 days to get the information to us, their records and their information that we ask. And then we need 5 to 7 days to process that in the event we have a number of companies. If you need something right away and you need us to expedite it, just let us know that. We don't want this to hold up procurement, but we do want you to know when you have a company, if you have a question about them, that we're able to vet them, that we're able to get their documentation. To participate in the Small Business Reserve Program, a company has to be a for-profit business. And we say that, we have to mention that because there was a time about 4 or 5 years ago, 6 actually, that small business reserve companies could be nonprofits. The law changed, and that's why we go through the eligibility criteria and we try to put them and make them as available as we can. I'm sure somewhere around the state, there may be a website that says you can be a nonprofit and be a small business reserve company. But look at our website, look at the COMAR, and you can see that it has to be for-profit business other than a broker. A small business reserve company, other than insurance and real estate, cannot just be a pass-through, someone who's simply negotiating a deal. They have to do the work. They have to meet the other qualification and eligibility criteria to participate. And sorry about that. The business has to be independently owned and operated. They cannot be a subsidiary of another business. The business is not dominant in its field of operation. And I bolded dominant in its field of operation because this language is in statute, and more times than we like, a company, a small business, will check in the application that they are dominant in their field of operation. And it says actually on a national level. Now, if you're a small business, how are you dominant in your field? It's like they're not paying attention. And once they answer the question that they are dominant in their field, and they go through the application, they save it and submit it, and they're found non-compliant because you cannot be dominant in your field and be certified in the Small Business Reserve Program, that triggers an audit. We then have to pull, if they want to reapply for the program, then they have to prove in real time you are who you say you are. You're not dominant because you only made $50,000 last year, and you only have 5 employees, or actually not that many, you might have 1 employee. So It's just you all understanding and all of us understanding the qualifications. So as we're talking to small business reserve companies, to tell them, please read the application, read the certification, the application for certification very clearly. Take your time. It only takes about, let's say, a half an hour. You know, if you're really reading, it would take about half an hour to fill it out. That's not a long time for a self-certification. So that could get them access to prime contracts with the state of Maryland. This is the breakdown as it relates to the size standards for the Small Business Reserve Program. We've bolded, so wholesale, retail, manufacturing, service, construction, architectural, and engineering. Those are our categories that a business has to select which category they fall in. Once you're in a category, it's the number of employees, in the case of wholesale, 50, or the gross sales, 4 million. And this is the hinge. The Small Business Reserve Program in the past, and I think it was 2012, 2013, increased the size standards. You used to have to fall within the number of employees. You could have no more than 50 employees and no more than 4 million in your most recently completed 3 fiscal years. Well, the law changed, and as long as you fall under one of the size standards, you still can participate in the program, which means if I have 55 employees, but I'm only making 2 million, an average of 2 million a year, that company is still eligible to participate in the Small Business Reserve Program. Same thing with manufacturing. No more than, let's say you have 50 employees, but your gross sales are 7 million. You're still eligible. And I think the thought was at some point, the company's gonna top out. You're gonna outgrow, but that's where the numbers are now. They increase the size standards, and and that's where we are. That's where we are at this point. 1 second. So let's get into procurement forecast. We're going to look at the procurement forecast, the strategic business plan, the quarterly and annual reporting requirements, and the procurement forecast. As we were talking, I'm going to see if this goes where I want it to go. Will it go? Maybe it's not doing what I want it to do. Okay, so give me 1 moment. So I'm going to bring my screen over. I'm going to ask my handy dandy if I want to share a screen. I can. Give me 1 moment, folks. I want to change to linking. I want to stop sharing this. Give me 1 moment. I want to stop sharing this, and can I pull 1 tab over? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Like this. Give me 1 moment, please. And then I have to go here.
Try
here.
Try taking that tab.
Right here.
Try taking this tab and putting it on that screen.
Right. Okay. Give me 1 moment, folks.
Yep.
Nope.
Try dragging it all the way over.
Okay, great. Okay. And I'm not sharing this though.
Yeah.
Present now and entire screen.
Yep.
That's what I'm going to do.
Yep.
Great. This is for the technically challenged, and I do appreciate this. And I want to make sure, are you guys seeing my the Small Business Reserve Programming Reporting Toolkit? If you are, please say yes.
Yes, Lisa, we see it.
Thank you so much for the. So in terms of the procurement forecast template, we have had the procurement forecast template here in not only the Small Business Reserve Toolkit, but also in the MBE Toolkit, which you access right here. These are both accessed from the homepage of our website, and wanted you all to know where you can get them. We're not going to get in, and I'm not going to get into the, well, I'll open it up. If I can open it up, I'll open it up so you can at least see, for those who have not started your, I said, please forgive me. I said strategic business.
If you guys will bear with us for a minute or two, it looks like Lisa may have disconnected by mistake, so she should be returning shortly.
Sorry about that. I apologize. I'm trying. You guys are very patient. I was getting the procurement forecast and I accidentally opened up the strategic business plan, so I apologize for that. What I wanted to share with you was, and hopefully you can see this, your,
Lisa, we can't see it.
coming right up. Thanks for your patience. It's back. It should be back in 2 seconds. Now you should be seeing the instructions for
Yes.
the fiscal 20. Thank you so much. So for the fiscal 2020 procurement forecast, yeah. I'm sorry, this is this. I'm gonna have to correct it. It's the wrong version, but this is due June 30th. This forecast is asking you to simply fill out a template. That's all you're having to do is fill out the template. The template is fiscal 2021. I apologize, somehow the other 2020 at the top. But you're filling out your 2021 procurement forecast. And we are aware that budgets have been frozen. So in terms of what is going to happen, what is going to happen in terms of your budgets, we're looking at your best, the information that you have, if you have the information, we're hoping that you can get it into the procurement forecast, because what it allows companies to do, it allows companies to go to our website to look for procurement opportunities. We start loading this up with your data, like the Department of, the Department of General Services. And I appreciate your patience. I got a little rattle that was loud where I am. There's construction going on in my neighborhood, teleworking. By having the procurement forecast based upon your approved budget allows businesses to get some idea of some business down the road. And I wanted to mention the Department of Aging, General Services, DBM, and a few others have already turned in your reports. It's not putting anybody else down, just saying you guys have already gotten them in. So some agencies, things are loosening up. I haven't had a chance to review all of them, but we're going to start loading those in the new fiscal year, which is just around the corner, July 1st. This data, and this is what the template walks you through, includes all projected purchases of $100,000 above for the fiscal year. Keeping in mind the forecast, as we said, is provided to the public and allows them to see what's possibly on the horizon. The more information they have, the less they call to ask you. They're able to do their own research, they're able to do their own planning, and then when they call you, it's a more informed company that wants to do business with you. So we're asking you guys to please pay attention in terms of filling out the templates. What has happened typically in the past is that templates are not filled out completely. We don't have contact information on some of the templates, on some of the projections. And so what's going to happen is they're going to call, instead of the procurement officer that should be listed, and I'll show you, okay? When a business owner is coming to our website, they're going to the procurement forecast portal. They can search by the kind of work description. They can search by the agency, by procurement categories, by contract value. They can search by region or projected advertisement dates. All of these metrics, the agency who's doing this, the procurement categories, the contract value, the search by region, and the search by projected advertisement dates are all fields that we ask you to fill out. So here's a typical, we just did combine a spread of various kinds of procurements, the forecasted items that are here. Now, you can see that we know the agency, we have a description, we have an estimated total contract award, we have the procurement officer's name, phone number, and email. That's in a great world. If we don't have the procurement officer's contact information, we are giving them the Small Business Reserve Liaisons contact. That's the only other contact that a business has. So if we're able to drill down, if you're able to drill down to the level of your agency knows and has enough insight already as to who the procurement officer will be in their contact information, it benefits everyone. The incumbent name, again, benefits everyone. You can't give an incumbent if it's not a recurring contract, we got that. But if it is a lot more helpful when you're looking at companies, small companies, veteran owned, because the procurement forecast is for all companies are interested. Our interest is in small, minority, and veteran-owned businesses because they're looking at partnering with these larger companies to see if they can get some contracting work. So if they're able to find out that KCI Technologies got the contract for $1 million to $5 million, and maybe there's some subcontractable work, they can then go to Email and Marketplace Advantage, look up this company and get their contact information and let them know they'd like to potentially work with them. That's why the tools that we're giving, the reports that you're doing are driving information or providing information that vendors are then, I've got vendors calling over the last few months, when is the procurement forecast coming out? They want to know, they're looking. And so we appreciate all of the hard work that you all do to put into that, to put into the procurement forecast. As I was showing you, the template is, the template is here. Where are we going? Let me go to the home page. So when you go from our home page to the SBR Program Reporting Toolkit, you're going to see the procurement forecast instructions, and you're going to see the template. You're also going to see it in a lovely way because my colleague has a lovelier web page, but you're going to see also the, where is it? Did I pass right by it? Yeah, the procurement fiscal 2021 procurement forecast. So you can look on the MBE page, you can look on the, let me make sure I'm not missing you guys, and you can look on the SBR page. You're going to get the instructions and the template no matter where you go, okay? Next, we're talking about the strategic plan, SBR strategic plan. You've got one to do with the MBE, and Michelle will talk about that later. But the SBR Small Business Reserve Strategic Plan is designated. Each procurement unit shall submit an expenditure plan. The Small Business Reserve Program is set forth in COMAR 2111-0106. I get communication from liaisons and report preparers who are asked by folks who have to sign off on these reports, why do I have to do this? Because COMAR says, we need these reports, there are reports that help us to drive the program. The Small Business Reserve Strategic Plan is due 60 days after the enactment of the annual budget. So somewhere between January and the end of session, the budget gets enacted. It usually doesn't last until April that they take to get the budget. Sometimes it does, but then you have May and June. That's where the date June 30th comes from in terms of the strategic business plan. And so we're not making it up, we're trying to, and you'll see with this particular plan that, one second, that it's also in the SBR toolkit.
Excuse me, Lisa. We have a question on the side.
I see Latanya Lowe. Thank you so much.
I have been waiting.
All week approvals, reports done. What happens if I don't get the approvals on time for the fiscal 2021 forecast report? God bless you. I'm going to say what we've determined on signatures because of the COVID. If your supervisor is, or the person who's able to sign off, you are allowed to email them, to email us, copy them, and say that they have approved. We will allow that. Our superiors have told us we can allow, does not have to be signed, but your supervisor has to be copied. If they're willing to go with the report until you can get the physical signature, that's one way that you can get around that. If they say they won't release it without a signature, we'll take it as soon as you can get it. Just know that we're doing our best to get these in, and we know that you are too. So that's why we were able to get approval to have supervisors copied. I don't know if that helps you, LaTanya, or not, but that's a workaround. And if they're, have questions about that, they can email me. I'll be happy to have our chief of staff reiterate that we don't need the signature on that. We need an approval, and an email saying that they do approve this report is sufficient during COVID. These are unprecedented times, and we don't want to hold something up if the only thing is they couldn't put their name on it. People are doing a lot of electronic signatures. So let us know if they won't approve that. If the document, everything's great and you're just waiting for the signatures, let's see what we can do to kind of work around that. Okay. Again, thank you to DJS, DGS, Controller's Office, DBM, and a few others who have turned their strategic plans in. Now, we're talking about the annual report and the, let me go back just a moment, because I went past myself. I wanted to mention, when we're talking about the strategic plan, because we have gotten questions, you're welcome. We have gotten questions about the strategic plan in terms of what we're looking for. Let me see if I can, open it up on that. I'm sorry, let me see if I can. I tried. The strategic plan is a questionnaire. And for those who have not answered it before, we're asking you to look back at fiscal 20 to see how many SBR contracts you did within certain thresholds. We're trying to get you to look at last year in order to improve this year. In answering the questions, and many of you mentioned in the past, we would ask for the 4 quarters of 2020 by June 30th, and you can't get those numbers by June 30th. So we've amended the strategic plan that we're only asking up to the 3rd quarter of 2020 for you to look back at what you were doing as it relates to SBR contracts, and then look at what your plan is to getting more SBR contracts in 2021. So we ask a series of questions in terms of, are you looking at outreach events? And that's the question that came today at outreach events. Be thinking as well, and we're asking you to be creative, because if you're not having live events, there are entities that are having virtual events. I mean, I look at like Buy Local, Be Local. Hopkins is having events that they're attracting small businesses. So, there could be some interactivity if you are able to participate in some of the other virtual events that are going on. It's not a one size fits all, but a number of entities, whether it's chambers of commerce are hosting, people are hosting Facebook Live events. So if you're able to participate, as some of you are the outreach people for your agencies in some of these streaming events, it will attract other businesses to you if you are on the panel. And again, if you've got some procurements and you've got some stuff down the road that you know is pretty solid, whether it's small procurements or things that you are pretty comfortable and you want to start cultivating those relationships, so that as money starts to loosen, don't know when that'll be, but as money starts to loosen, you will be in a position of having gained some relationships with some small businesses. So that's one. It's really having you guys think. Also, Liaison brought up about partnering with other agencies. Some agencies are looking for other agencies to partner with. So sometimes the partnering can be buyers have databases of businesses. We all know that email and marketplace advantage is there. But everybody, if you've been in the business for a long time, you have your own list of businesses. It could be formal, it could be informal. And we tell business owners to drill into your agencies, to call the Small Business Reserve liaisons, to ask them, are there internal lists in your agency that buyers use for their small procurements, category 1 and 2, where they're not formal, but they're looking for qualified vendors. Something else that you all might think about doing is mining email and marketplace advantage and looking for vendors. This is also a good time. You might be thinking about one-on-one Zoom meetings with vendors, or getting a group of vendors to agree to a virtual meeting, because a lot of people are in right now. So those are the kinds of things that we're asking you to do in the strategic plan, is to think about and plot out how you're going to get to 15% SBR procurement, even in COVID. I mean, because quite frankly, let me pull this up. I was looking at our numbers, and I wanted to get, I don't see it. I'm going to go back. But our last published data for was 2018. Our 2019 is not open, it's not available right now. It will be very, very shortly. But from the 10%, from the 15% that we are legislatively mandated to spend with SBRs, we're at 2.36%. We were. It's incrementally gone up. That's designated. Now we're at 10.21% incidental spend. Money is being spent with a little over 10% small business reserve companies across the participating agencies, which is improving. This year, when the number comes out, it's going to be higher than that. The issue is when small business reserve companies get a procurement, but they never had to register as an SBR. I say it this way. They are an SBR. It was not a designated procurement. So they didn't get the procurement because they were an SBR. They just happened to. That's incidental spend, and that doesn't count in the legislative mandate of the program. And so the money is spent, but the program doesn't grow, because what happens is a number of SBRs aren't getting the contracts when they go to look for designated. And now with Emma, email and marketplace advantage, for formal procurements and even for informal, you can designate procurements during the procurement process as designated SBR. I mean, it's a little easier. Well, let me not say that. They're moving toward making it more user-friendly to designate SBR. SBRs can be designated in the procurement forecast. You can say you really think at this point that you're going to spend that money with an SBR, and it goes in the description of the procurement, small business reserve. We prefer small business reserve over SBR because people sometimes get confused and think it's SBE. But bottom line is that you can designate. It is a lift, but when we're talking about the number of, currently, there are about 3,400 companies registered, SBR companies registered in Emma. We lost a few. I should say the number went down when email and marketplace sunsetted. There were probably, on paper, they said about 6,000, a little more than 6,000 small business reserve companies in the database, but they were not all active. They were not all doing business. And so the migration from email and marketplace to email and marketplace advantage, the SBRs are down a bit. So outreach is important. When you're coming across businesses that it looks like they are SBR certified, you have to go a little deeper to find out, because, let me do this, 1 second. You have to go a little deeper with Emma when you're looking for companies, because again, sometimes vendors don't fill out their profile completely, so you'll find they're certified by doing just a simple public vendor search. And I don't know how many of you knew that the public vendor search option, pardon me, is available in Emma now. I want to see if I can go to this. I'm going to give it a shot. Sorry about that. One moment, because I know that there's a lot of training. I need to get a typist. Maryland. There's a lot of training going on with Emma right now. Even without the training, I don't know how many of you are looking at the quick reference guides that are available for buyers, for procurement people, that actually show you how to search for, here we go, where we are, adding vendors to your project. Where are we? I'm looking for searching for public vendor search for buyers. You do not have to be logged in to Emma to find buyers. And the quick reference guides actually walk you through that so that you can see, you can sort the buyers by SBR, by VSBE. When the Email and Marketplace Advantage system rolled out, the public vendor search option was not included at first. It had to get up to speed. So now you can go to the login page of Email and Marketplace Advantage. You do not have to log in. You go right to vendor search and you can begin searching for vendors. And that way you're able to get more access to vendors. And those of you who know small businesses that are not registered, just encourage them to register. It's such a simple process that, you know, most of them don't even realize they could be certified, you know, in the time that it takes to go get some gas and come back, as long as they have their tax records and the things that you need as a business. And so that is a help. Emma it's coming along. Each time we look at it, something is improving, something is working a bit better. And that's why I added on here the quick reference guides. But you're able to get to the quick reference guides, which is a huge help because I do talk to procurement people and liaisons who are not as conversant with Emma. And so if you're looking for things, in particular as it relates to the Small Business Reserve, and we're going to get to the Veteran Small Business Program in just a moment, but want you to be able to reach out to us as a resource. Couldn't do everything in the time that we have today, but I could definitely be able to let you know where you could come for help, for assistance. I'm going to backtrack just one moment because I got on SBR and I didn't say, I wanted to reiterate that the fourth quarter report is not, no fourth quarter report is due for the Small Business Reserve program, no fourth quarter. Typically we get these and people, it can't be as complete as they should be if the fiscal year is just closing out June 30th. So you have until September 30th to do the 2020 annual report. And the templates will be posted by June 30th. And we had sent that out in the compliance bulletin, as well as discussed it on the compliance call, that the templates will be up, and I think they already are up in the MBE toolkit. The SBR annual report fiscal 20 template and instructions will be up by June 30th. We would prefer, please use the ones, but you're going to have 2 months. I mean, well, July, August, you know, and September to complete the report, 3 months. The first quarter report for fiscal 2021 is not due until October 31st, and those templates will also be in the SBR toolkit, MBE toolkits, by June 30th. Again, I think they may be already in the MBE toolkit, but they will be in the SBR toolkit by that time, by June 30th.
Excuse me, Lisa. We have
Yeah.
a couple of questions. One from Janelle, are vendor email addresses available in Emma?
Say that one more time.
We have a few questions. One from Janelle, are vendor email addresses available in Emma? I noted that most email addresses are available in Emma in the internal search.
Yes. So I'm going to do, and let me see. When you do an external search, the public vendor search with Emma, and you're not logged in, what my colleague Tanita was saying is that, and I think Janelle was saying as well, sometimes the vendors have not put their phone number in the right spot for a public vendor search, or their email address. Some will have the email address, no phone number, some phone number. So you can log into Emma and look up that company and get more information in their profile. If you are an admin user, or you can access an admin user, it is pretty simple. I mean, it's just a login, and it's similar to the public vendor search in terms of the ability to filter by SBR and by company name. You can also filter by the commodity code or the commodity United Nations service product code that they use. But you can get email addresses in Emma. If you're finding that they're not, what we're having to do is reach out to the vendors. They usually have some contact. It's either a phone number or an email address if they don't have it, and we reach out and ask them to finish filling out their profile so that procurement officers can contact them. So hopefully answers your question. What's the next one? Email addresses. In addition, some email addresses are listed in the vendor contact section. What do you mean?
That was my response to Janelle, stating that some of the email addresses are listed internally in Emma, and then the email addresses are attached to the Emma login for the vendors.
Yep.
And then that some email addresses can be listed in the vendor contact section.
So this is one of the things, Tanita, and we've talked about this, is actually we're going through as the days progress, cleaning out the database, actually reaching out to vendors. They're reaching out to us, but we're also reaching out to them as we're going through the database, because some people just don't know that they have not completely filled out their information. So, okay. But you can get a little more internally, as Tanita said. So Alan asked if there's a crosswalk document. Well, I'm not aware of one, and I think you're talking about from the the United Nations service product codes to the NIGP codes. Is that what you mean, Alan? The old codes, or for the NACE codes for MBE? Which ones are you looking for a crosswalk for?
Actually, I was looking for a document that's similar to the previous one, that crosswalk MBE and SBR that we used to have under the old system. I don't know if that would be available under this newer system, but I know I've had some issues with some of the categories of service not being found in the new SBR database.
So it's actually Emma's data. It's a shared database. And they did not load all of the codes that were possible into Emma initially. So what they are finding, and what we are finding, is that when you find a scope of work, a commodity code that is not listed, you may email the help desk, the Emma help desk, and ask them to add it, and they will. So right now there is no, the crosswalk. I'm not aware of one that exists. I will ask, and we'll kind of begin to see the United Nations service product codes. There are so many more of them than there were of the NIGP codes, or even the NACE codes that I'm seeing. It's a completely different reality that the Office of State Procurement chose to go with United Nations service product codes. But we'll see. I've not seen anything, but doesn't hurt to ask. Wish I had a better answer. What is this? She needed the 16 QRG. Great. Also to tell you, and this is not, the QRGs are actually being updated weekly. So what you saw 6 months ago has changed. And so again, I will ask the question in terms of, is there a crosswalk? Because there may be. The more we've started to work with this system, I think the more the internal people that are working on Emma are learning about what the possibilities are. But I know they didn't offer anything initially, and that's what has confused quite a few business owners, or should I say frustrated them in terms of trying to find their codes. And and they can, if it's not there, I've told them they can contact us and we'll email the help desk or contact our procurement officer, and I've had procurement officers contact us to add scopes of work to Emma. So that's all I can say about that. We are continuing to get companies to renew. Emma just started sending out notifications that companies are expiring. EMM used to do that. Emma just started. So we've been doing some manual notifications to vendors to let them know that they need to renew, because as you all know, the Small Business Reserve is renewable annually. And something that compliance folks on your end need to be thinking about is when you are awarding an SBR with a contract that's more than 1 year, it's likely that their certification is going to expire within the term of the contract. And while they may get notified through Emma that they need to renew, unless you notify them, you're not going to get the credit when they get paid down the road for having worked with a Small Business Reserve company, even if it was a designated contract. If they're not SBR certified at the time that you're paying them, your report, it's not going to they're not going to come in. And so that is something to keep in mind, that, you know, just looking at when you're awarding companies, you know, that their certification is not about to run out. We've had companies call us and say, oh my goodness, you know, my certification is going to run out. I just got this contract, and how do I renew? So many of them are trying. It's just that an annual renewal process for many people is cumbersome. And so we want to make sure an agency is going to get the credit for having worked with a Small Business Reserve company and not let the certification lapse. If you can get them to recertify, you know, within the day or within a short period before you paid them, then it's not going to cause a problem, and you will get the credit. So that's pretty much it for that. Ms. Tanita Johnson, when you were ready, we wanted to be able to give an update on the Veteran Small Business Enterprise Program that now resides with us. And I will go ahead and mute my microphone. Small Business
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Tamita, a Small Business Reserve Compliance Manager, and I'll be speaking to you about the Veteran-Owned Small Business Enterprise Program. So the Veteran-Owned Small Business Enterprise Program provides contracting opportunities to veteran-owned small businesses. Specific agencies spend at least 1% of the total dollar value of their procurement contracts to these certified VSBE firms. VSBE businesses must meet certain size standards and be at least 51% owned or controlled by one or more individuals who are veterans. A certification within VSBE requires a vendor to do 3 things. They must register within eMaryland Marketplace Advantage, or EMMA, to obtain veteran verification from the Maryland Department of Veterans Affairs or the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs VetBiz, and 3, submit the EMMA VSBE application. So step 1, vendor must register within eMaryland Marketplace Advantage. They can go to the emma.maryland.gov website and select the new vendor register now tab. And if they're already registered in Emma, they can just log in and enter their password. Next, the vendor must obtain veteran verification from the Maryland Department of Veterans Affairs or U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs VetBiz, and they can find this information on our page, gomdsmallbiz.maryland.gov. They can click on to the VSBE program tab, and then to your right under quick links, you'll see Maryland or veteran verification. I'm sorry. Yes, so quick links to your right, you'll see veteran verification form. That's for the MDVA form. And then under that VetBiz link, you'll see VetBiz information. And the following slides will show you what is actually in those links. So this one is for the veteran verification form link. It directs them to the Maryland Department of Veterans Affairs verification of veteran status document. The vendor forwards this form to the MDVA, Maryland Department of Veterans Affairs, via mail. The address is listed at the bottom of the page. However, note that with the COVID-19 pandemic, vendors have asked about forwarding the documents via email, and the request has been accepted. So if you come across any vendors who wish to submit this form via email, you can direct them to me, and I will be certain to provide them with the contact information for our MDVA rep. Upon submitting the form, the vendors will receive an MDVA number, which is MDVA, for example, MDVA 2020-000 if they are verified as a vendor by the MDVA. This number will be used as their VSBE certification number. If the vendor selects the VetBiz link on our website, they will find information for the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs regarding veteran verification information. If the vendor decides to obtain veteran verification from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs VetBiz, they can start here. Upon obtaining this veteran verification, the vendor would be listed within the VetBiz database. If the vendor already has a VetBiz account that is current or valid, the DUNS number that is attached to this account is used as the veteran verification. So this DUNS number is to be listed as the VSBE certification within EMA, as long as the DUNS number can be verified within the VetBiz database. So for the veteran verification, they can obtain either the DUNS number from VetBiz or the MDVA number from the Maryland Department of Veterans Affairs. Third, the vendor must submit the EMA VSBE application. This application can be found within the credential section of EMA. They can click on the Add Certifications button, and in the field type, they would select Certifications VSBE application. It consists of a few questions, as you see here. Is the business at least 51% owned and controlled by one or more veteran or disabled veterans? Does your company meet the size standards? Enter your VSBE certification type, whether it's VetBiz number, the DUNS number, or the MDVA number, and they can also select if they don't have one yet. And also that they agree to the VSBE program terms. And once the information has been obtained, we will be able to review the information and determine if they meet the program certification status. And as procurement officers, you are able to view the VSBE vendors and find their VSBE certification number and expiration date. There are EMA internal and external vendor searches. With the internal vendor search, those with EMA admin capabilities can actually log into their account select vendors and browse vendors. They can select the pin or funnel icon to the left of the screen. And actually, can you go back 2 slides if you don't mind? Yes, here they can actually select the pin or the funnel icon to the left of the screen to choose the VSBE vendor option, and this will allow you to view VSBE vendors. Note that you will find VSBE certified vendors by checking their EMA accounts. And here within the company info section, you'll see the VSBE certification number listed and the VSBE application status as approved. When you see those 2 things, you know that the vendor is a VSBE vendor. And in the VSBE certification number section, it can be a 9-digit number, which would be the DUNS number, or it can be a 12 alphanumeric character, which starts out with MDVA. And you can also perform an external vendor search. And there you would go to emma.maryland.gov, select the vendor search tab. Once you select the vendor search tab, you can click the VSBE vendor option, and that will provide you with the VSBE vendors. And there you'll find to your right the VSBE certification number and the expiration date. If those 2 things are not listed, you can contact me and I'll be able to assist you with finding out what is needed to get them certified. But as long as those 2 things are there, the VSBE certification number and the expiration date, that vendor is in the actual VSBE program. Note if you find any discrepancies or if you have any questions, you can contact our office and speak to myself, or you can reach out to the vendor and tell them to contact our office. Note that we are working on getting the VSBE vendor search to a better place, but we need vendor information and assistance, and we could use your help as well if you see any issues within our searches. And do you have any questions?
This is fantastic, Tanita. And some questions may arise as we're finishing up in terms of talking about VSBE information. Those of you, we talked about the fact that, see, this was fantastic. Thank you so much. That VSBE VSBEs don't have liaisons. There is no VSBE designated, we should say, or named in statute. However, VSBE reports are due October 1st annually. And so a number of agencies have been turning them in. And our office was mandated legislatively to take over the Veteran Small Business Enterprise Program, the directory and the certification. And you heard Tanita talking about that. Emma came right on time because we could not do it with EMM. Marketplace was not going to work in terms of creating the portal and the ability to get veteran small businesses registered and certified in a place where we could sort and be able to access them. So the reports and the reporting are coming. Procurement agencies shall use the forms and affidavits developed by the governor's office, our office, Small Minority and Women Business Affairs, for reporting procedures required by this title. And there's a link here, a VSB Schedule E, which is the utilization affidavit, and participation schedule are online. So you can get those through this link. They should be completed similarly to MBE forms, and I'll get your question in one moment. Similarly to MBE forms as it relates to COMAR 21-11-1306. And for those who may be a little uncertain, if you're able to tune in to the MBE liaison training today because VSBE is subcontracting like MBE is. You may be able to kind of get a better understanding. Bidders can request a VSBE waiver if needed. We're not encouraging. We're saying if there's not the capacity, can't find the firm to do the work, you can request a waiver. This is the utilization report that was referred to. And so this is what you're going to be able to use. It's accessible through, I guess this is our website, gomdsmallbiz.maryland.gov. So you can link to this form to be able to fill it out through our webpage. Use data from the 700 series reports from answers or internal databases to capture VSBE payments and awards. We'll have to change the report type to vet in answers where appropriate. So little workarounds right now. At this time, credit card payments cannot be tracked in answers. Therefore, agencies, and this is agencies that, give me one second. Agencies will have to track these payments manually. Total all procurements column on the annual report template should be identical to the total all procurements total for MBE reporting. So you shouldn't have two different totals for your total procurements for the MBE program and the VSBE program. Their exclusions are similar, are the same. As with MBE reporting, if a contract has a VSBE prime and sub, do not double count. The prime contractor total award should be listed. Do not report the VSBE subcontractor awards and payments on these contracts. I'm looking to see if someone has, I see a question here from Margaret. For FY 2020, we have only one business less than 5,000. Do we need to report that? Margaret, and is this mean you did a procurement for 5,000? It was less than 5,000?
It was less than 5,000 for veterans business. So we're saying, do I need to report that or no?
I don't know why you would. Well, it was a credit card. Is that what? Because it was a credit card, and we can't track credit card payments in answers. Yes, you do. They're asking, our report folks are asking you to track it and go ahead and enter the payment manually, track it manually. It counts.
Okay.
It counts. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Thank you, Margaret. Any other questions about the VSBE stuff? VSBE information. Okay. Great. Want to let you know, just you guys, upcoming, those who have not been participating, we have a bi-monthly compliance call. And we we send out the notifications through our procurement compliance bulletin. We're sending that out to the SPAG list, to SBR Liaisons, to MBE Liaisons, and we have one list that's just called Add Me. And that's if, you are involved in this, but not maybe in a formal way. You're not the liaison and you're not the head of procurement, but you want to participate in and get this information in the compliance call. Our next compliance call is on July 29th. And I'm trying to think, registration. Yeah, we sent out, there's a registration link in our compliance bulletin, and there will also be in the toolkits. I don't know if it's not in the toolkit yet, but the procurement compliance bulletin, if you've not received a link for the compliance call, this is the opportunity, like today, after this day long of meetings, it may bring some things to a head with you guys where you're thinking, there's some things I wanted to know about compliance issues and there's no meeting coming up. And maybe other people want to know about this. That's what the compliance call is. It's 2 hours. We get your questions 2 weeks in advance of the call so that we can have answers for you on the call. And so bring your compliance questions. I know we've already started to get some for the July 29th call. And then the next SBR and MBE liaison trainings right now are October 6th, 2020. Don't know if that's going to be in person or virtual. And so did want to just let you guys know, just remind you of our website that's here, the GoMD gomdsmallbiz.maryland.gov, so that you can know when when we do come back online with our outreach events, the technical training, the Ready, Set, Grow, and also the website resources. We get a number of things that are helpful to businesses and sometimes helpful to you as professionals that are dealing with businesses. And again, all of your templates are there on our website as well. And if anyone has any questions, we've got a little bit of time. It's trying to end a little early, so that way you guys can have a break before the 1 o'clock, but definitely open to questions. And I know, if I'm not mistaken, I was trying to get my email. Someone asked, and I didn't quite, I couldn't get the question. Let me see. But those of you, if you submitted a question in my email, I'm going to say for the record, I'm technically challenged. I'm doing better as I get along, but I will respond to your question. Someone asked something about credit cards, but I can't see, I don't see the message right now, but I will get back to you because if it is something about the credit card reports and not being able to get them, I think it was for the whole year, I'll reach out to answers to ask them, because there are times when the least or the most recent credit card information just hasn't been processed yet. But if you're not getting it going back for the year, that's a problem. And let us know, and actually reach out, because you need to email the service desk and tell them you're not able to access this data. It should be there. If we get a number of people that's happening with, and it's not user error, there may be a problem with the system. And I think, can you send out the MBE slides? A question is to send out the MBE slides before the meeting. And Michelle can answer that. I don't have the MBE slides, but we'll put it out there because there's some time before the 1 o'clock meeting.
Lisa, I can add it to the invite, so you all should get an update on the invite.
And what happened to my, okay. And that is it. I just want to thank my colleagues today in particular, Michelle and Chantal, doing such a terrific job on our policy and explaining how our programs intersect, in particular when it comes to the Procurement Review Group process, because we get so many calls about that from procurement people who are not quite sure. Let me pull my screen back. Not quite sure. Stop. Okay. How it fits together, and what the thresholds are, and how, when and how to designate an SBR and when to put goals on it. So it's really helpful when you give us the feedback. And I'm going to send my link out, survey link. I meant to thank Tanita Johnson, who is a rock star in terms of the VSBE. This has been such a heavy lift, and she never, says a word about it, but creating this veteran small business directory just out of tatters. I mean, you got veterans who want the business, and Emma that just comes online, and she's coming up with a way to get over 300 veterans certified, in a short time and with a lot of patience. And so it's going to be very valuable to the veteran community. We hear from them a lot. They advocated to get this legislation to move out of vet biz and come to Maryland, because the Maryland veterans said, we want to get certified here. We don't want to have to go. We already served our time. We fought already, and we just get certified. And so advocacy does help, and it does work. Michelle, did you have anything that you needed to add?
No, I think I'm good. I'll see our dual liaisons in a little while.
Yes, the harder worker. Everybody's working hard, but they're even harder working when you're doing the double role. So thank you all very much. Look forward to speaking. Yes.
I'm sorry. We did have one more question.
Yes.
Will everyone receive the slides for this presentation?
Say that one more time.
Will everyone receive the slides?
You said that. I'm going to put the link in the meeting invite and resend it, so everyone's going to get them today.
Great. Thank you,
Okay.
guys.
Anyone? Yeah. As soon as we get off, I'm going to put the meeting, the PDF in the meeting link. I think that's it. Thank you guys. Have a lovely rest of your afternoon, and I'll definitely be listening into the MBE liaison training that's from 1 to 4 p.m. Thank you so much.
Great job, Lisa.
Thank you. The team. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good one.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank everybody. Really appreciate it.